What if a single Ukrainian fighter jet could outthink an entire Russian air defense network and live to strike back?
At 10 a.m., the quiet skies over occupied Kharkiv exploded. A thunderclap ripped the air as a Russian S-400 missile erupted from its launcher, slicing upward through low clouds at Mach 13.5. Below it, a Ukrainian Su-27 fighter screamed across the tree line, already in full afterburner, engines roaring like twin hurricanes. The shockwave hit first, then the alarms. Inside the cockpit, every warning light turned red. The pilot didn't need to look. He already knew. He'd been painted by one of the deadliest radars on Earth. He slammed both throttles forward. Fuel burn spiked past 320 kilograms per minute. The altimeter dropped. The jet dove into the valley at 480 feet, hugging the ground so tightly that the snow spray struck the wingtips. Behind him, the missile's vapor trail looked like a comet. 7.6 meters of solid steel and vengeance. The first explosion came seconds later. A fireball ripped the horizon, shaking windows 50 kilometers away. But the Su-27 was gone, vanished below radar, flying inside the Earth's shadow. The S-400's computers recalculated, but the target no longer existed in their geometry, only in memory. The missile detonated in empty sky, scattering fragments across frozen fields. From the Russian command post, operators stared in disbelief. From the Ukrainian cockpit, the pilot's hands shook but didn't hesitate. Mission timer still green. He was alive and heading straight for the target. This was not training. This was the moment when physics, fear, and raw human instinct collided. 30 seconds after the first blast, the Russian radar screens reignited, not with confusion, but with precision. Deep in Belgorod territory, another S-400 battery came online. Its gravestone radar spun up silently, pushing out 2,700 electronic beams across the sky without moving a single part. Somewhere within that field, the Ukrainian Su-27 was still running dark. At Mach 0.92, the fighter skimmed the terrain, every vibration transmitting through the pilot's gloved hands. Then the next warning tone hit, harsher, closer, deeper. A second 40 N6E2 missile roared off the rails at Mach 14.1, climbing through the stratosphere, searching for the perfect angle of death. But this wasn't a chase, it was math. Proportional navigation computed 120 times per second, predicting exactly where the jet would be in 87 seconds. The pilot knew it too. He didn't try to outrun it, he outthought it. Diving lower, he slid behind a ridgeline so sharp it bent the radar horizon by 0.7 degrees. The Earth itself became armor again. From 22 kilometers away, the missile seeker lost lock and began hunting probability instead of reality. Every second it searched drained fuel. Every second he survived bought life. For 10 long seconds, silence returned. Then his threat display lit up again. Another radar, another sector, 340 kilometers east. Russia wasn't firing blindly now. They were building a digital cage around him. Fuel burn hit 34%, pressure spiked, and still the mission timer counted forward. Ahead lay the target, and between him and it, an entire wall of guided fire. By 10:04 a.m., the Russians stopped aiming at what they could see and started shooting at what they knew. 300 kilometers east, a second S-400 division initiated a cold launch sequence. No target lock, no radar track, only data, patterns, times, and probabilities fed from months of intercepted Ukrainian flight logs. Two 48N-6DM missiles fired into the open sky, arcing high above the clouds at Mach 7.9, pre-programmed to arrive at a single mathematical window. Every Ukrainian JDAM ER mission needed altitude, at least 27,000 feet, 410 knots, and 3 minutes of level flight to achieve glide range. That pattern had repeated itself 42 times in the past 3 months. The Russians calculated he must do it again. But this pilot didn't. Instead of climbing, he stayed hidden below 600 feet, banking hard through the folds of terrain. The first missile crossed his projected flight path 3 minutes early, detonating 21 kilometers above nothing. The second followed, bursting into a white fireball that warmed only the stratosphere. Inside the Su-27, fuel readings dropped fast, 2.4 tons remaining. The pilot had traded altitude for invisibility, and every second below the radar horizon cost more range. Yet the gamble worked. The predictive grid above him collapsed. Then, a new tone pierced the cockpit. Sharper, faster, a different frequency. Not S-400, something closer. S-300 tracking beam acquired. The duel of statistics was over. The duel of reflexes was about to begin. At 10:06 a.m., the battlefield closed in. A hidden S-300 PMU, 2 battery, only 78 kilometers ahead, came alive like a ghost. Its grill pan radar split the air with pencil-thin beams, each only 0.6 degrees wide, sweeping for any trace of motion. Then it found one, a radar altimeter pulse at 4.3 gigahertz, repeating 50 times per second. The Su-27 had just announced its position to the world. 2 9 M82M missiles burst from their canisters, flames cutting across the frozen steppe. At Mach 7.6, each carried nearly 480 kilograms of explosives, guided not by automation, but by human hands. This was semi-active command guidance, where an operator steered with a joystick, flying the missile manually by radar image. No computer to jam, no algorithm to trick, just human reflexes versus human fear. Inside the cockpit, the threat display screamed. The pilot dumped chaff, hundreds of metallic strips cut to exact radar wavelengths. One missile took the bait, its guidance beam locking onto the decoy cloud. The second stayed true. At 2.3 kilometers, the pilot yanked the stick, pulling 6.8 Gs, dropping altitude to 380 feet as the missile overshot, slamming into a ridgeline and erupting into a wall of flame. For a moment, there was only static in his headset and the smell of burning metal. But victory came at a price. His last maneuver broadcast his position across the entire sector. Within seconds, 3 more S-300 radars flickered online, creating a trap that no map could escape. The sky was closing around him. At 10:08 a.m., 3 S-300 battalions lit up the horizon like a storm front. Their combined radar field overlapped into a single digital net, 12 tracking beams, each calibrated to follow the Su-27's every evasive turn. Within 2 seconds, 4 9 M83M2 missiles launched from different quadrants. One high, one low, one cutting across his flight path, one chasing from behind. The cockpit shook from the shockwaves. The pilot's threat receiver overflowed. 8 simultaneous tones, all converging. He forced maximum afterburner, twin AL-31 engines screaming past 18,000 RPM, catapulting the aircraft upward from 480 to 3,700 feet in 4.3 seconds. The sudden vertical climb wasn't courage. It was chaos turned into math. By going straight up, he forced the 4 missile guidance beams to cross each other. The interference hit instantly. 2 missiles lost signal, spiraling off course. The third kept lock but couldn't sustain its climb, running out of fuel 540 meters below his tail. The fourth came closest. Sensors tracking, motor burning at 3,200 degrees Celsius, closing fast. At the final moment, the pilot flipped inverted and dove. The missile passed within 150 meters, close enough to melt the paint on his stabilizers, before its warhead detonated in open air. Shockwaves rattled the canopy. Internal pressure dropped. Fuel was now 48%, the left engine showing heat fluctuations. But the Su-27 was alive, wounded, exhausted, still moving west. For every missile he dodged, another radar woke up. Far ahead, 2 Su-35s were vectoring in from Russian airspace, their Urbis E radars already searching for a target climbing through thin air. The chase wasn't over. It was about to evolve into something far faster and far deadlier. At 10:11 a.m., the horizon shimmered with new signatures, not missiles, but fighters. Two Russian Su-35S interceptors were closing from 150 kilometers, their Irbis-E radars sweeping wide arcs through the stratosphere. The system locked on instantly. In their cockpit, a pilot selected an R-37M hypersonic missile, the kind designed to erase aircraft before they even see it coming. The missile launched like a solar flare, Mach 6.1 on ignition, coasting for 40 seconds before its second stage motor reignited for the kill. It needed only math, bearing 183, range 142 kilometers, closing fast. The Ukrainian Su-27, now climbing through 26,800 feet, was seconds from releasing its JDAM fuel, 22%. Distance to target, 64 kilometers. Every reading on the display turned red. The pilot's altitude, climb, put him inside the missile's engagement cone, the most lethal space in the sky. At 18 kilometers out, the R-37M Seeker came alive, locking onto the Su-27's radar shadow. He had 40 seconds. JDAM release required 38. He held steady. The bomb detached from the centerline pylon, wings deploying in 3.2 seconds of agonizing stillness. Then he pulled. 9.1 Gs, rolling inverted into a vertical dive. The missile overshot by 120 meters, detonating overhead, showering the jet with hypersonic fragments. Metal tore, alarms screamed, and yet, both engines held. The Su-27, battered but alive, dropped back into the clouds. Behind him, the JDAM began its glide toward the Russian command post, silent, guided, and unstoppable. The duel between man and machine was over. The final judgment was already falling from the sky. By 10:15 a.m., silence returned over Kharkiv Oblast, but it was not peace. It was aftermath. The Ukrainian Su-27, torn by shrapnel, leaking fuel, and trailing smoke, dropped back under the radar horizon. Its engines coughed at 9% thrust imbalance, yet the flight computer held steady. Every vibration, every flicker on the display reminded the pilot that he was flying a machine no longer meant to fly, but still alive through sheer will. Behind him, 30 seconds after the R-37M missed, the JDAM reached its final coordinates. The bomb's guidance chip switched to terminal mode, calculating the last meters with 5.4 meters of INS drift correction. At 72 degrees impact, it struck the roof of a 9-story Russian command center, penetrating 3 floors before detonating. The overpressure shattered every structural column in 4.1 milliseconds. The building folded inward, collapsing in a straight line, leaving nothing but a square crater of smoke and twisted steel. 2 neighboring towers remained standing, glass blown out, but frames intact. Surgical precision that told its own story. This wasn't rage. It was engineering. Far away, Russian radar operators realized too late what they had missed. All their equations, all their predictive firewalls, had been undone by one pilot flying lower, later, and smarter than the math allowed. The air defense net, hundreds of millions of dollars in electronics, had been beaten by one man's instinct and a few seconds of silence beneath the hills. At 10:19 a.m., the Su-27 crossed back into friendly airspace. Fuel readout flashing 11%, hydraulics still whining. Ground control confirmed the impact. One voice in the headset said it all. Target erased. No cheers, no celebration. Just breathing. Steady, exhausted, human. For the rest of that day, satellite photos would show one empty grid square where a Russian command post had stood. And for the rest of the war, every radar operator on both sides would remember the morning when numbers lost to nerve. Because sometimes victory isn't measured in kills, but in the seconds you survive when every law of physics says you shouldn't. If you were that pilot flying home on fumes, the sky burning behind you, what lesson would you carry from that day? Type it in the comments, and remember, in modern war, survival itself is a message.